My name is Dana Whitmore. I'm 46 years old, and for the last 13 years, I gave everything I had to Northstone Consulting. Late nights, weekends, missed holidays. If the team needed something, I was there. No excuses. I worked my way up from junior strategist to senior VP of client development without ever asking for special treatment. I wasn't flashy. I didn't play golf with the partners. I just delivered. Every single time. 2 weeks ago, I closed the biggest deal in our firm's history. A $92 million contract with a global logistics company. I spent 9 months nurturing that relationship, flying to their Singapore office on Christmas Eve, rewriting proposals at 3 a.m., and even covering for one of our VPs who bombed the first pitch meeting. That deal? That was mine. Everyone knew it. Or so I thought. Last Monday, I walked into what I assumed was a post-deal debrief with the partners. I even brought pastries. Instead, I was greeted by Rachel from HR and one of the firm's managing directors, Colin, the same guy who once forgot my name in a leadership retreat. They were sitting at the long glass conference table like they were about to read me my Miranda rights. Dana, Colin began, voice smooth as a butter knife. As you know, Northstone is entering a new phase of strategic realignment. As part of that, we're making some adjustments to better reflect our brand direction and market posture. I blinked. I'm sorry, what? Rachel jumped in like she was trained to buffer the blow. This isn't about performance. Your contributions have been deeply appreciated. But we're aligning our leadership with a new vision focused on, quote, digital forward, next-gen agility. I sat there, staring at them. This couldn't be real. I had just landed a record-setting contract. My name was literally in the press release Colin gave on CNBC. We're offering a generous severance package, Rachel continued, sliding a manila envelope toward me like it was a consolation prize at a charity raffle. 3 months' salary and extended benefits. That's when it hit me. I wasn't part of the new brand. I wasn't shiny enough, not digitally agile enough, maybe not young enough. They wanted to replace me with someone who looked better on a pitch deck slide. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I looked at both of them, picked up the envelope, and said, "Thanks for the clarity." Then I walked out of that glass office, my heels echoing down the hallway I had walked 1,000 times with pride, and straight into the bathroom, where I stared at my reflection under the fluorescent light, trying to remember how it got to this. They thought I'd crumble, but they had no idea what was coming. I spent the next few days in a haze, bouncing between disbelief and quiet fury. I kept replaying that meeting over and over again, like some twisted loop I couldn't shut off. One minute I was at the top of my game, and the next I was being ushered out like a piece of outdated software. Digitally agile. What a joke! The worst part? No one even had the decency to look me in the eye and say, "We're pushing you out because we want someone younger with an MBA from Stanford." But that's what it was. I didn't have the shiny credentials. I didn't post inspirational thought leader garbage on LinkedIn. I had a bachelor's from Ohio State and a wall full of thank you cards from clients who trusted me with their multi-million-dollar portfolios. Apparently, that's not market posture. I started going through old files, deleting my documents, clearing my laptop. That's when I stumbled upon a photo tucked behind my monitor, a picture from our holiday charity campaign 3 years ago. I was standing with a client, his wife, and their 3 kids. I'd helped turn their shipping startup into a logistics powerhouse. They sent me a Christmas card every year with a handwritten note. I wasn't just a consultant to them. I was part of their story. And it hit me, I had been part of so many stories. I'd mentored entry-level hires who are now VPs elsewhere. I'd flown out on a weekend to help a panicked client during a server crash. I once talked a CEO off the ledge, literally, after his company took a PR hit. My number was saved in dozens of phones as Dana, fixer. But none of that mattered to a firm chasing aesthetics over substance. At lunch, I met up with Carla, our head of analytics. She looked worn out. "They cut my budget by 30%, she whispered over a turkey wrap. Told me to figure it out or step aside. Same old song. Later that day, I ran into Aaron from the marketing team, laid off last week. He laughed bitterly when I told him what happened. It's happening across the board, he said. They want the look, the buzzwords, the podcast vibe. Results? That's secondary. That night, I sat in my apartment, sipping coffee I couldn't taste, staring at the city lights. And somewhere between the bitterness and the disbelief, a thought settled in. I built real value. Not value that fits on a slide deck. Real, measurable human value. And if Northstone couldn't see that, maybe it was time I stopped trying to prove it to them. Maybe it was time to prove it to myself. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. Not yet. The minute you start talking, people start guessing, twisting, leaking. I needed time and silence. First thing I did was dig through my employment contract. It took me an hour and 2 glasses of wine to find the original PDF. I sent it to a lawyer friend of mine, Eli, who now specialized in employment law out in Chicago. We hadn't talked in years, but when I explained what happened, he didn't hesitate. Send me everything, he said. And Dana, don't sign a single thing they give you without running it by me first. These corporate exits are designed to bury your leverage. Turns out I hadn't signed anything locking down my client contacts or restricting my ability to consult. That generous severance came with a vague non-solicit clause, but Eli all but laughed at it. It's unenforceable fluff, he said. They're banking on you not reading it. I wasn't about to be that naive again. The next day, I sent a text to Josh, a client-turned-friend who'd moved on to become VP at Alder and Knox, one of our biggest competitors. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but I still remembered his daughter's name and his dog's birthday. That's just who I was. He called me within minutes. What the hell happened? I gave him the abbreviated version, keeping emotion out of it. Let me get this straight, he said. You land the biggest contract in Northstone history, and they let you go? Apparently, I don't align with their rebrand, I said dryly. He laughed, but it wasn't a funny laugh. Dana, I don't want to overstep, but if you're open to it, we should talk. Later that night, I dug through an old business card box and found one from Layla Chin, someone I'd mentored years ago who had since launched her own boutique consulting firm. I reached out, mostly just to catch up. By the end of our call, she offered to meet for lunch and talk possibilities. Suddenly, the air felt different. The bitterness was still there, but something else was rising under it. Movement. I started mapping out ideas. Quietly. Strategically. I listed my strengths, my client base, my niche knowledge. I researched domains and LLC paperwork. I bookmarked CRM platforms and sketched out names on napkins. I stopped thinking like an employee and started thinking like a builder. A few nights later, Josh sent me a one-line email. If you build it, I'll be your first contract. That was the moment. The shift. The click. They had tried to erase me with one corporate memo. But I was already rewriting my next chapter, one NDA loophole and coffee-stained business plan at a time. It took them exactly 9 days to realize what they'd done. I was mid-coffee with Layla, going over logo drafts for my firm in the making, when my phone buzzed for missed calls from an unfamiliar number, followed by a message from Colin. Hey Dana, would love to connect. There's been some discussion about revisiting things. Revisiting. Right. I let it sit for an hour, maybe 2. Then curiosity won. I called back. He picked up immediately. Dana, so glad to hear from you. Surprised to hear from you, I replied calmly. There was a pause, that awkward executive shuffle of words. Listen, we've had some recalibrations here at Northstone. Some board feedback. We think maybe we acted too hastily. Too hastily, I repeated. Before or after the part where you slid my severance across the table like a parking ticket? He ignored the jab. There's talk of bringing you back in. Elevated role. Better compensation. We'd position it as a strategic return. I nearly laughed. Strategic return? I wasn't a product launch. And Danielle? I asked, referencing the golden girl with the MBA who'd been subtly circling my accounts since day one. She's been reassigned, he said, choosing words like a man walking on glass. Look, Dana, you built serious client equity here. And the feedback from Sintra Global's rep was, frankly, brutal. Sintra, the $92 million deal. The client who now refused to sign unless I was involved. We want to make this right, Colin said. Whatever it takes. I let the silence stretch. I pictured them in their glossy boardroom, scrambling to patch a hole they'd drilled themselves. Finally, I said, it's not about money, Colin. We're prepared to go north of 40% over your previous package, he added quickly. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Let me be clear, I said. I didn't leave because of the salary. I left because when I gave you everything, you made me feel disposable. Dana, I don't lack opportunities. I lacked respect. And that's not something you can backpay. He went quiet. No spin left. I ended the call with a simple, best of luck with your strategic direction. And that was it. That afternoon, I forwarded the call summary to Eli, my lawyer, and poured myself a glass of wine. I didn't need their offer. I had my first client contract, a working office plan, and something far more valuable than compensation. Clarity. Northstone had made their choice. Now it was my turn to choose, and I was choosing me. 3 weeks after that phone call with Colin, I unlocked the front door to my new office space with trembling hands and a heart that hadn't felt this alive in years. It wasn't glamorous. The place used to be a real estate firm, and you could still smell old printer toner and stale ambition in the carpet. The ceiling tiles were slightly off-white, one of the lights flickered, and the reception desk had a dent no one could explain. But it was mine. Whitmore Strategies. Clean, simple, stamped across the glass door like a declaration. I had one intern, a used desk I found on Facebook Marketplace, and a lease I signed with equal parts excitement and nausea. Josh followed through on his word. Sintra Global became my first official client within 48 hours of launch. Layla sent over 2 part-time analysts who wanted to learn from someone who'd actually built something, and by the second week, I had my first sleepless night not from fear, but from deliverables. Thomas, a former teammate who quietly walked out of Northstone the same day I did, sent me a message that just said, "You building a team yet?" I replied with a Google Meet link. He joined the next morning. We worked out of folding chairs, stole Wi-Fi from the cafe downstairs for the first 4 days, and ate more Costco trail mix than I care to admit. But the energy was electric. There was no office politics, no phony mission statements taped to glass doors. Just real work, real purpose, real people. I didn't do a big announcement. No press release. No flashy LinkedIn post. But somehow, word spread. Maybe it was clients. Maybe it was ex-colleagues who were tired of pretending they were still happy. Maybe it was just karma. Whatever it was, the morning we officially opened the doors, our soft launch, I arrived to a line of people standing outside. Some in suits. Some in hoodies. One woman had her toddler with her. And I swear I saw a guy in cargo shorts holding a portfolio binder like it was a golden ticket. Valerie from admin, who I hadn't seen since my last month at Northstone, walked in with a tray of Starbucks and said, "I'm not here as a client. I'm here to work. If you'll have me." I handed her a badge on the spot. We didn't have polished floors or catered lunches. What we had was belief. A shared mission. And something every billion-dollar firm forgets the second they scale too far. People follow people. That first week, we registered 6 active projects. By Friday, we were booked for the next 2 months. And when I looked around at my scrappy, chaotic, beautiful office filled with laughter and purpose, I realized this wasn't a comeback. This was a beginning. 6 months in, Whitmore Strategies was something I hadn't dared to imagine. Thriving. We'd tripled our projected growth. Clients were coming in faster than we could onboard. 2 of Northstone's former flagship accounts had quietly migrated to us. No drama, no announcements, just clean exits, referrals, and signatures. Our little underdog firm was starting to make real noise, and I could feel it in the way competitors suddenly started following my LinkedIn posts. Even the silence from Colin was telling. Deafening, really. Then came the article. Boutique firm snaps up market share after leadership fallout at Northstone. The headline blared across an industry newsletter I didn't even subscribe to. The piece didn't name names, but everyone in the loop knew exactly what it meant. There were whispers about mass departures, stalled accounts, even a canceled merger. One afternoon, Layla forwarded me an invite from the National Business Women's Summit. Keynote speaker, Dana Whitmore. Topic: Reclaiming Power Through Reinvention. I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about proving them wrong. It was about standing in front of that crowd, young women, overlooked professionals, burnout managers, and saying, "You're not crazy. You're just in the wrong room." The day of the speech, I stood behind the curtain, heart pounding, notes shaking slightly in my hand. But when I stepped on stage, the applause hit like a wave. Not because I was famous, but because I was real. I told them what no LinkedIn guru will, that sometimes you'll give everything to a place that discards you anyway. That titles won't save you, but courage might. And when I walked off that stage, a young woman, mid-20s, wearing scuffed heels and a hopeful expression, stopped me and said, "You just gave me the push I needed." That was it. That was the win. Not the headlines, not the contracts, the ripple, the proof that walking away wasn't the end. It was the first move toward everything better. The email came late on a Thursday. Subject line, coffee. It was from Colin. I hadn't heard from him since the awkward attempt to lure me back. Now here he was, 6 months later, sliding into my inbox like we were old friends. The message was polite, careful. Said he admired what I'd built. That he respected the hell out of how I landed on my feet. Then came the ask, let's discuss potential collaboration between Whitmore Strategies and Northstone. Win-win. I stared at it for a full minute before forwarding it to Eli with the subject line, "You're gonna love this." We both knew what was happening. Northstone was bleeding. Their latest earnings report was a disaster, staff turnover was public knowledge, and at least 2 of their former partners had jumped ship to start their own boutique firms, ones that didn't treat loyalty like a liability. Still, I took my time. 3 days later, I replied, "Colin, I appreciate the outreach. Truly. It means a lot to hear that from you now. But I've already built the table I was never invited to sit at. Nothing personal. Just business. Dana, no bitterness. No snark. Just closure." I closed my laptop and looked around the office. Valerie was laughing in reception, Thomas was scribbling on the whiteboard, and 2 new interns were assembling IKEA chairs for the overflow workspace we never expected to need. It smelled like coffee and dry erase markers and momentum. This was never about revenge. It was about rising, quietly, powerfully, and unapologetically. About creating something from scratch, rooted in values no restructuring plan could erase. They tried to write me off, but I rewrote the whole playbook. Success didn't taste like payback. It tasted like peace. Because in the end, the best kind of victory isn't loud. It's simply building what they never believed you could. Please share your feelings below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next videos.